Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this report is on each member's desk. If there is no objection, those reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the report is adopted. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. This is the Benson J motion. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file herewith returned as amended by the Senate, in which amendment to concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House File 461, an act relating to natural resources. Benson J moves that the House concur in the Senate amendments to House File 461 and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Senate.
Representative Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do move the House concur the Senate amendment. House 461 of the bill be repassed as amended by the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members.
Any discussion to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by the Senate.
Third reading, House File 461 as amended by the Senate.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Benson, can you tell me if you would yield to a question?
Representative Benson will yield. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Benson, on this, are we adding any FTEs? How is this going to be done, administered by the department?
Representative Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Anderson, no additional state employees of any kind, no additional cost to the state either. It is simply requiring that the DNR provide this general use permit for these people in your and my city of Minnetonka and Plymouth. This is no cost. This is a wonderful opportunity to see if we can have some private and public partnership on doing some good work on environment. Think of it as a pilot project to convince the DNR they ought to let private homeowners participate in good environmental cleanup.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Benson, just to be clear, so the Department of Natural Resources has said for them to issue these permits, they will incur no additional costs.
Representative Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Anderson, that is correct. No additional cost.
Representative Anderson.
And Mr. Speaker and Representative Benson, how many permits do they estimate they will issue?
Representative Benson will yield. Representative
Mr. Speaker and Representative Anderson, one. Only one. Just for this one small lake.
Representative Anderson.
Mr. Speaker, I'll speak to you offline then.
Further discussion of the bill. Representative Leidiger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Benson, why are we not extending this to all the lakes in Minnesota? Could you explain that?
Representative Benson will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Leidiger. The reason is the DNR was uncomfortable in expanding it at this time, and I think they and I agree that this would be a good pilot project. I think, in a sense, to give the DNR comfort. We do want to be careful and make sure that when these kinds of activities take place that we have good environmental policy and that things are not being done in a cavalier way. And so the DNR is comfortable permitting this one as a kind of a test.
Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Benson yield for another question?
He will yield. Representative Swedzinski.
You know, we're talking about pilot project. Just kind of just want to get your thoughts in dealing with the DNR. I'm a firm believer a pilot project should have multiple sites. Is there any guesstimation of maybe how many other lakes they would think would be adequate to study the project to see if it's successful? If we're talking to constituents that may be interested in doing this, how many other lakes they'd be interested in allowing this to happen?
Representative Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, this issue came up because a lake association requested my assistance. They had been working with the DNR on this without a great deal of success. They have been given a general use permit to harvest these hybrid cattails mechanically. There's no chemicals, nothing else being used here. But the DNR is an agency who, it is charged to do best practices for environmental protection and they were not comfortable in expanding this statewide, as I answered on a previous question. And so my advice to you would be to identify maybe a community group in your House district who would be interested in pursuing something like this at their own cost, and then approach the DNR as I did and have testimony in committee to communicate with the DNR as to whether this particular activity meets the standards that we all would want. So I'm hopeful that this will encourage the DNR to move forward with others that have similar projects that are worthy. I just think in general terms that when you have a community organization that is prepared at their own expense to help clean up something that frankly passed policy by, in this case, a community who used this lake, which does not have public access, as a dumping ground for rainwater runoff over the last 20 years, and basically nearly has ruined this lake. That if the private owners on this lake would like to make some personal investments to try to save it to what degree they can, they ought to be allowed. I just believe in private property owners having some right over their own property. Actually, they own the land even under the lake. It's a small lake, and this community organization has been interested in doing this for a long time. So I'm hoping that this will give comfort to the DNR, and that if you have groups in your district or districts throughout the state, the DNR will begin to understand that with careful evaluation, they can grant general permits to others.
Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would he yield for one more question?
He will yield. Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just during this process, have you been contacted by any other lake associations that would maybe like to move forward with this throughout the state at all? I mean, has anyone else talked to you about this?
Representative Benson.
Mr. Speaker and Representative, no, they have not. But maybe if this activity turns out to be a success, that people will become aware of it and hopefully move forward on their own. And I certainly hope that it will happen. I just believe in public-private partnerships, and I certainly believe in allowing private property owners to have some say over their own property, as long as they do it in a responsible, environmentally responsible way. So good luck to you.
Yeah. Representative Detmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the author please yield to a question?
He will yield. Representative Detmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Benson, I have lakes in my area also, and could you tell me what percentage of treatment does the DNR is going to allow your lake association to treat that lake? What percentage?
Representative Benson.
Mr. Speaker and Representative Detmer, it won't be any treatment as such, which would indicate some kind of a chemical treatment. This is simply a mechanical harvesting of an invasive hybrid species of cattail. Very aggressive, that has spread throughout the metropolitan area and is moving in other parts of the state, something that frankly got away from the state. The DNR has not officially identified or labeled these hybrids. The original is the Minnesota cattail, but it has hybridized now with a Eurasian narrowleaf cattail. And it's very aggressive. And so in the past they were granted a permit to harvest this cattail, and it was successful, but they grow back again. And so now all this really does is allow them to harvest it at their own expense again. So that's all it is. There are no chemicals, nothing like that involved.
Representative Detmer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And would Representative Benson yield to another question?
He will yield. Representative Detmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Benson, what is the DNR charging the Lake Association for a permit?
Representative Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Representative Detmer, the Senate added an amendment which requires the DNR to provide this permit without charge. There was a question and concern on the part of some of the association members that the DNR that had originally set a charge was going to quadruple it or more. There are some, I suspect, who still don't like the idea of private property owners being able to even mechanically harvest these cattails. But that's hearsay. I'm not going to say that it was a fact. But the Senate author then added this amendment as comfort language for the homeowner association.
Representative Detmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I guess we heard that the DNR has waived a fee for treating one's lake. I hope that maybe sets a precedence that maybe the DNR will lower the fees for lake associations to treat their lakes, because the lake associations they have to buy in many cases they have to buy the chemicals, they have to hire a company to treat the lake or to harvest the weeds. All the work is done by the homeowners associations to make our lakes a better place for recreation and for fishing, and I hope the DNR will follow suit and maybe cancel their fees for permits to treat one's lakes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Krisha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm wondering if the author of the bill will just yield for a question.
He will yield. Representative Krisha.
Representative Benson, I'm just wondering, as I listen to this is a 17-acre lake, I believe. Is this the process that we may be seeing in the future when I understand the homeowners were upset and frustrated with the DNR? Is this a precedent or a process that we're going to see later for trying to get things through the DNR?
Representative Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Kisha, I have no idea. But I would say, Representative, and I respect your questions, but looking at the clock, this is such a simple little bill. I really think we need to go on, and unless you have something that's really pressing, I'd rather not take any more questions, and I just ask for your support. And if you don't feel comfortable, that would be fine as well. So I don't plan to take any more questions, Mr. Speaker, at this point.
Representative Krisha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I respect that. I too understand that the clock is ticking, but as the ice is coming out of the lakes, I come from a lake that has 1,100 acres, and I'm a little concerned what the process will be for homeowners. This is a 17-acre lake. I don't completely understand why we would be putting this bill in front of us. And to your point, with all the budget and everything else we have coming, this is a small bill. I absolutely agree this is a small bill, and we should move on. So thank you.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Representative Benson, I'm disappointed to hear that you're not going to take any more questions, because I did have a couple of I thought were fairly simple. You know, I've had conversations with you. I supported you in this in committee. I supported you on the House floor. I'm not sure I'm going to support your bill now. I hope you'll reconsider your position to not yield to any questions. So I will ask, Mr. Speaker, would the author of the bill please yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Benson. I do have one concern on the permit, and I realize it's not that big a deal. I support the concept totally. We do need to allow lake associations to have more leeway in managing their lakes the way that they see fit, obviously in cooperation with the DNR. I just want to be clear. You stated, I think, and I want to make sure I hear this correctly, that the DNR will have no expense in any type of issuing of the permit. Is that correct? And then I have one other question, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Benson.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Representative Fabian, you're such a nice fellow. I just could not answer your questions. You're just so terrific on the committee that you and I served. So please, for the other representatives who I said I would not respond, you're a special case, so I had to respond. I do not believe there is any cost to the DNR, no.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, thank you for the lovely comment, I'll say. My other question has to do with I'm going to say DNR oversight at the lake itself. My sense is that knowing the DNR the way I think I do, they do like to micromanage, they do like to oversee. My sense is that there will be DNR personnel on site when you're doing the the removal of the cattails and so forth. If there's no cost to the Lake Association, to the DNR, how do we propose to cover those expenses for DNR staff that's going to be there doing oversight? Thank you.
Representative Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Fabian. I'm not really sure. I do know that I'm going to be voting for the Environmental Committee funding for the DNR, and I think they can eat this little one. I don't think it's going to be a big problem for them, Mr. Representative Fabian. But we always need to be careful. All I can say to you is that when you find a lake association who's willing to spend so much money out of their own pockets to try to improve the environment, you can count on a vote for me.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Benson. I just have one last real quick question. How many lakeshore property owners are there on the lake? And I will sit down. Thank you.
Representative Benson will yield. Representative Benson.
Mr. Speaker and Representative Fabian, I'm not exactly sure, but I do know that nearly every single resident, is not a public access lake. It's just a small one. There's residential properties surrounding it entirely, and I believe nearly every single property owner is there. And I do know that they've all acquiesced or agreed to allow this to go forward as they had in the past.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 108 ayes and 20 nays, the bill is passed as amended by the Senate and its title agreed to.
Message from the Senate. This is the Simon motion. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file, herewith returned as amended by the Senate, which amendment the concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House File 580, an act relating to state government. Simon moves that the House concur in the Senate amendments to House File 580 and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Senate.
Representative Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. House File 580 is the Safe at Home modernization bill. It passed here unanimously off the House floor, passed the Senate unanimously too. This is the address confidentiality program that the Secretary of State's office has run for 10 or so years, and we just had to make some changes, such as, if you recall, making sure that members enrolled in the program are actual Minnesota residents, such as making sure that it extends not only to battered or abused people, but their children if they're in harm's way as well. The Senate added a couple of changes, notably deleting the section concerning municipal utility data. It was no longer necessary, it was obsolete, it was moot because of what we had done in the bill. And then clarifying that government entities are prohibited from sharing data on a program participant only if the participant has submitted a notice of participation. The idea being, government's not a mind reader, and if someone says they're in the program, then that's good enough. Those are the changes, as I said, unanimous off this floor, unanimous off the Senate floor. I ask for your vote to concur.
Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by the Senate.
Third reading, House File 580, as amended by the Senate.
Third reading. Any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 128 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed as amended by the Senate and its title agreed to.
Message from the Senate. This is the Lillie motion. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file herewith returned as amended by the Senate, in which amendment to concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House File 1069, an act relating to state government. Lillie moves that the House concur in the Senate amendments to House File 1069 and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Senate.
Representative Lillie.
Mr. Speaker and members, that is my motion that we concur with the Senate. Back in April, we passed off the House floor a contracts bill from this body that had 5 contracts in that and 1 compensation plan. This now has, since then, there was a couple other contracts that have been passed, and in the Senate they added those in. We had an opportunity to hear those in Subcommittee of Employee Relations and then on to Chair Johnson's Committee on Jobs. And these contracts, the additional ones, have been negotiated with MMB and the MnSCU system. And there's basically 3 provisions. One's through the Minnesota State College faculty, and it covers about 5,000 employees. The provisions in that grouping are pretty similar to the contracts that we've passed in the previous bills this session. The second provision's a little bit different. It's the MnSCU Administrator Personnel Plan, and we had quite extensive discussion in the subcommittee and in Johnson's Jobs Committee. So, and then also the third provision includes the setup of the personal plan for the new MNsure system of healthcare. And then there's one final kind of an odd little thing that's been added, because there's one contract that's still out pending, and this covers employees that are in the law enforcement group, And for these to become law, they'd have to agree to the contract, and then they'd have to be approved by the subcommittee. And what they're this provision's a little odd. So what they're trying to the money's in the current budget for this department, but if it's going to be passed when we're done with session, and they don't want it to go into next year's biennium, and so they're separating and setting basically a carry forward on that money. It appears that there might be some questions, so I'll happily stand for those, Mr. Chair and members.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Lillie yield to a question?
He will. Representative Pepin.
Representative Lillie, I just want to be clear. Just looking at this, it looks like the Senate added on the 2 MnSCU contracts and the MNsure employee contract. Was that heard in state government finance, or was that heard in Ways and Means?
Representative Lillie.
Mr. Speaker and Representative Pepin, that was not heard in State Gov Finance or Ways and Means. We're picking up from the Senate, and they were, you had yourself and Representative Drazkowski, we had an hour and a half talking about these, and I don't know if it's ever enough time to discuss some of these bills, but we had quite a bit of time, and then we had some I don't know exactly how much time in Chair Johnson's committee, but no, to answer your question, no, they were not heard in State Gov Finance or in Ways and Means.
Representative Pepin.
Mr. Speaker, I would move that we refuse to concur, and I would like a roll call.
Representative Pepin moves we refuse to concur. Roll call being requested, seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Lillie. Representative Lillie, I appreciate all the hard work that you have put into this committee, but these are pretty big contracts, and I feel they have not been fully vetted. They need to go to State Government Finance. They need to go to Ways and Means. I have in front of me the MNsure contract, and there are 11 managerial staff making over $1 million. Almost all of them making in the 90,000s. 3 making nearly what a commissioner would make, plus several staff, and really other than the labor or the subcommittee and then on labor relations, it hasn't been fully vetted. And further, the administrator plan, I think that really needs to be vetted further. There's some pretty decent increases here, along with some things like tuition, and they haven't been discussed in committee. So I think that we should refuse to concur. And we've heard a lot that we can't amend these contracts. But I think the very least we ought to be able to do is to vet them in committee. And that hasn't been fully done here, especially with this MNsure contract. It's brand new. It needs more work. So with that, I would ask for your support to refuse to concur.
Representative Pepin, I need a number of conferees you'd like appointed.
Mr. Speaker, 5.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Zellers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise in support of the Pepin motion, refuse to concur, and I'd ask Mr. Speaker if the author would yield to a question.
He will yield. Representative Zellers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Lillie, one of the things that we had talked about in Commerce Committee also was the compensation that was going to be given to the MNsure, and what was going to be going, when we were going to have that opportunity to review this. And as Representative Pepin said, there's one page of the managerial staff and then the MAPE staff, but a little bit more concerning for me was going in a little bit further, and we had talked about this committee about those that are not classified, the unclassified employees, and we see a range of anywhere from $109,000 to $156,000, and I'm curious where or when in conference committee this came up and the ranges where they were brought from, and then what the House position was, or the House at least discussion was, as it relates to, just from my personal perspective because of a Commerce Committee member, the MNsure contract.
Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Zellers. I was not on the conference committee for MNsure, so I'm not sure of the details in which you inquire. But the range that for the mince-shear folks is no different than the range that currently exists in current law. So there's people that on the commissioners in different areas that make above the governor or are related to that, and that's current practice and law. Just to be clear, I don't think there are any MNsure employees right now. So some of the numbers I heard earlier of certainly they're coming. I'm not going to deny that, and they're going to be filled out. I think MMB staff is currently staffing those, so current employees. So that doesn't really answer your question. It was kind of more to Representative Pepins, but I'm sorry. You might want to ask Representative Atkins to yield if you have questions to the MNsure, the conference committee.
Representative Zellers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and that's all right, Representative Lillie, and I won't ask you how he got to it, because the point is that we didn't know. You're bringing it back as a report from the Senate. Some of the people that probably have a different name for it, a bomb or a missile or whatnot, but it hasn't been properly discussed. We haven't had a chance. The Commerce Committee, and heck, we met this morning at 8:30, so we could go back and have the discussion in Commerce Committee, but that's the point. We're going to approve contracts that the House didn't have a position on. We didn't have the proper debate. I won't speak to the higher ed. Maybe that's Chair Pawlowski or Representative Nornis's purview, but this is absolutely uncalled for when it comes to approving salaries, especially of a brand new agency that's never existed, and we're just going to willy-nilly approve contracts that are in the hundreds and thousands of dollars per employee within a scale within the contract of upwards of $156,000, and never having this debate in the committees of purview. So I would ask members full support for Representative Pepin's motion to refuse to concur. The House has got to have a position on this, and we've got to have our chance to debate several millions of dollars worth of public contracts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill, if it would have came back and it was just the MNsCU with the IFO contract, I think I could have given it serious consideration. I know that comes to a surprise since I haven't voted for any of the other contracts, but this is at least one group in my mind that over the last 5 years have not gotten anything. And what we're looking at in their increase is 10% on the base as far as new hires, but a 5% for those who have been on staff, and that would equate to about a 1.1. My major problem with this is just the fact that with the MNsure now, as I brought up in labor and workforce and regulated industries, is the total hypocrisy here. And if members, if you don't know the language here, MNsCU, in fact, is now forced in their executive ranks to eliminate their pay for performance bonus. And I'm looking at Representative Winkler and Representative Simon. I can remember the conversations 2 years ago in State Gov Finance about how terrible it was if in some way we imposed some kind of pay for performance on our public employees. But here we go. It's not necessarily good spread across every branch. And no disrespect, I said the same thing in committee. What April wants, April gets. Because if you really look at what's going on in MNsure, not only at rate 24 or range 24, level 24, is the salary $153,600, but they have the ability of getting a 10% pay for performance bonus. So, Representative Winkler, would you stand for question?
Representative Benson. He will yield. Representative Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Winkler, can you remember this conversation a couple of years ago we had about pay for performance? I can remember on this floor and in committee that Representative Downey, when he proposed this with even amendments, all the railing and the gnashing of teeth and the weeping about how terrible this was, is this a little bit hypocritical now that first of all, I'll disagree. I'll get to the question. I'll disagree with Representative Lillie in the fact that our commissioners make more than the governor. That's okay. If that's not what you said, it's absolutely not the truth. They only make 90% of what the governor makes, and that's capped at about $108,000. But here we've got people at level 24 in Minsure now that will make $154,000 if we're rounding, plus a 10% bonus for pay for performance. And I'm assuming this was negotiated with MAPE. I don't know. We'll get some details possibly. It wasn't. But what do in terms, I was really hoping my buddy Representative Pulowski was here, because he had promised that some of this was going to get yanked out. Oh, here he is. Some of this would get yanked out, but in fact, here it is. We've got to pay for performance on public civil servants that we railed against 2 years ago. That's a terrible thing. Representative Winkler, how does this stand in the face of what we talked about 2 years ago?
Representative Winkler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Benson, first of all, for the record, I don't recall any weeping on the House floor, not even during the 3-week government shutdown, at least not in the legislature. I do remember a discussion that Representative Downey brought us to related to pay for performance. But if you remember, what Representative Downey proposed was to first cut everybody's pay and then give them an opportunity to earn back up to what they were making before and call that a performance incentive package. And it was a performance incentive package, which is that you could work harder and do better for the right to make the same amount of money that you were making before. But that's what we were opposed to. You raise a good point about MnSCU and the pay for performance bonuses that they've had in the past. I believe this contract is a pay for performance salary change. It's interesting. Representative Pulowski has in his bill significant accountability, oversight, and reform for MnSCU central office and its administrators, but the contract that we're approving today is just for the rest of this biennium. So this is the Republican contract that we're being asked to vote on. This is the one where you didn't do any of the accountability, where you didn't do any of the oversight, and you just left it to those people on the MnSCU board who believed in the corporate model of just throwing out money regardless of performance. So we're going to change that in the contract that you see coming out in 2 years. I think that's a step in the right direction, Representative Benson. As to the MNsure, I don't know any of the details. I don't think you're asking about that. But we were never opposed to pay for performance. What we were opposed to was cutting people's wages and then giving them an opportunity to come back up to zero by working harder and doing better.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And well, Representative Winkler, revisionist history, I don't remember any conversations around cutting pay. In fact, I remember the conversation being around they have contracts that we can't break. It was to have them be mindful of the fact that when the contracts are negotiated, that the element of pay performance be included. And for the record, I like pay for performance. I think it needs to be made part of the cap of the ultimate what a person can earn, but I think in holding people accountable for making organizational goals are not a bad thing. I rise today simply because it's hypocrisy. We're going to take it out of the MnSCU, and I think Representative Pulowski has probably some very cogent, good arguments for why they shouldn't have them. But we're going to allow for the people that making the most in terms of pay range in government service in the state of Minnesota, and we're going to give them one. Representative Pulowski, would you stand for a question?
He will. Representative Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Pulowski, I was with you in spirit, if not in your committee, in terms of holding MnSCU accountable for doing what they need to do to bend down the administrative overhead in schools. But we had a conversation, and I don't know, I don't blame you for this, but somewhere there's some miscommunications about this. My understanding was that as this came out, we would do whatever we needed to do, and I guess the we was you on your side in terms of kind of, maybe I got this wrong, but Representative Pulowski, tell me, are you for adding a pay for performance element to the MnSure pay range and agreement?
The member from Winona, Representative Pulowski.
Madam Speaker, members, we're talking about agreements that are already made and contracts. Am I for it? No. As late as yesterday, we had this discussion in the Higher Education Conference Committee. Both the Senate and the House have stipulations that bonuses or merit pools, the House would cover almost any type of situation, will no longer be able to be put in contracts or agreements in MnSCU. The problem is this: these are the highest paid public salaries in the state by a factor of 2 or 3 of the governor. They accept the salary. This is public service. They should not have to have an incentive to do public service at these salary rates, and certainly not a bonus. The corollary to this, particularly in higher ed, while we were paying the highest salaries in the state, while we were giving bonuses, while we were giving houses and cars, students were getting record tuition increases, record debt, and record cuts to higher ed. So, no, I do not support pay for performance. I do not support bonuses. I do not support merit pools. When you accept a salary of hundreds of thousands of dollars, I hope you can scrimp by on it. But you accepted the salary, and Representative Lillie is carrying a bill that's technically 2 years old. We're debating right now in the Higher Education Conference Committee to end this. And to say, if you accept the salary, you work for the salary, it's public service, and public service means no exorbitant salaries, no bonuses, no merit pools, no pay for performance.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Well, I'm going to conclude with just thank you for making my argument, Representative Pulowski. Maybe not 2 or 3 times, but here we have MNsure with salaries that will exceed $150,000, which, members, if you don't know, is probably around 25% more than the governor makes. And we're going to change the game for them only, because everybody else is going to lose it, and they're going to have the ability to make this. Members, I could have voted for the IFO's increase. I think those folks have went out without a raise for 5 years. If you look around and all the other things that we've done, I believe could make an argument. But folks, we're going to take a vote here pretty quick on concurring with this, and I think it needs more work. We need to send this back and have that element right on its own if it needs to, and have the other side justify what's going on there. But we need to send this thing back. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Uglum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would Representative Lillie yield to a question, please?
He will. Representative Uglum.
Representative Lillie, I too am concerned about moving forward on this and support the Pepin motion, but particularly with the MNsure contract, which we really haven't seen. On page 4, second paragraph there, am I reading this right, that some of the employees could get a maximum of 10% increases, and the executive director could even grant larger increases based on employment conditions that we may make this action necessary? Am I reading that right? And how does that's some pretty awfully squishy language there. How does the executive director come up with that? Representative Lillie.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Uglum. That is correct. Pay for performance payments shall not exceed 10% of the base salary of an employee covered under this plan in a fiscal year. So that is correct. One of the problems that I was wrong when I said earlier that they're making more than the governor, and Representative Benson was correct on that. But it's 90%, and then there's other things that get on top of that. But so they. MNsure's having, there's a little bit of trouble sometimes in public sector trying to find people. So you need people that come in with a skill set. So they're going to come from what? They're going to come from the banking industry or healthcare or insurance industry. So not all these people are going to come. Some of what Representative Pulowski said. They're not going to come with the 100% of the public service spirit, but. Yes, that is correct, to answer your question.
Thank you.
Representative Uglum.
Would Representative Lillie yield for another question?
He will. Representative Uglum.
Representative, we Republicans are awfully fond of saying that we're growing government and growing bureaucracy and everything else, but I also notice here that in the contract positions, here we have a governmental agency and we have a governmental relations director that's going to be paid $91,000. Is that necessary? I mean, we have a government agency and we are lobbying ourselves. Is that what's going to happen?
Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative Uglum, I would certainly hope, given the scrutiny that all of us are looking at this measure as it goes forth, that every hire is certainly going to be looked at, and I would highly doubt that they would be making those vital mistakes of hiring folks that weren't needed.
Representative Uglum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I guess, this is a new agency. I'm just very concerned. Obviously, quite a bit of controversy about this, and I would hate to see us run away with costs, because ultimately the consumer is going to pay. So, really, we're at the end of the session here. Haste does make waste. It would be good to get back to committee and fine-tune this thing. Thank you.
The member from Carver, Representative Leidinger.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Lillie, if you'd yield, please, for a question.
He will yield. Representative Leidinger.
Now, of these two new agencies, what are we talking about in terms of numbers of employees that these contracts cover? And do you know the total amount, dollars, that we're talking about here, please?
Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative Leidinger, you're talking about two new agencies. I have no idea what the two are, but I certainly know of the one, the new MNsure, and it's, according to the data that we've been given, is up to 85 employees.
Representative Leidinger.
Thank you. I meant to say contracts, two contracts. But here's, I have a big problem with this. This is the first time that we have had a chance to look at this. I mean, we're talking about an entirely new agency, new employee structure, and this is the first time any of us really get a chance to look at this. We're talking about a lot of people. We're talking about a lot of money. We're talking about a new agency. And I think this is something that should have been brought up in our committees and get fully flushed out. I mean, I stand in agreement with Representative who? No. Uglum. And this needs to go back. This is something that we need to do committee work on. It's something that is, I'm looking through the documents and try to make heads or tails of it in this short period of time, and then you're going to ask for a vote to concur with the Senate's position on this? Members, this is a concurrence vote. This is something we should not be concurring on. This is something we need to send back to the committee. These two contracts need to be cut off, bring the bill back the way it was before, and you should be dealing with these other contracts separately through the committee and bring it up that way. So members, vote to concur on this, or vote to refuse to concur, I should say. Thank you.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I've got three areas that I am interested in getting more information. If the chief author would yield for some questions.
Representative Lillie will yield. Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Lillie, the first one is I'm trying to better understand the nurses' student loan and clarification. It is a loan, not a grant. It almost seems as if there would only be 2 years of employment, a year before and a year after, in the 15 years and etc. So is it 5 years per employment, or does this cover something that the classes they took before and some debt they've already incurred? Just maybe a little bit of clarification on this benefit.
Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative, could you repeat the question? It was a little inconclusive what you were saying.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Please explain the parameters of the nurses portion of student loan. Clarification of that it is a loan, it's not grant. The 15-year limit, if they leave employment, what are those effects? If they're employed 2 years, do they have 10K? You know, just explain a little bit more fully because it's a little bit vague when the verbiage.
Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and Representative Quam. In the original grouping of bills that passed through the body, we had quite extensive discussion on different aspects, but on the component that Representative Quam's asking about is the nurses, and in there there's the establishment of a student loan repayment reimbursement program, and reimbursement is up to the discretion of the appointing authority. The debt must have been incurred within 15 years, so that's what he's asking about. So yes, payments cannot exceed $5,000 per calendar year, nor exceed $25,000 per nurse. So the nurse must have been employed for at least 1 year, and I think we sent this all out to you. You know, so it was probably in your packets that certainly were. I don't know if they were in this time, but they were in with the bill as it went forward the first time. This part of the nurse was in that part. So,
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I won't try to get clarifications. If they only work 2 years, do they get a total of $10,000? You know, if it had to be, you know, if they had all the debt incurred before they started, etc. I'll do that offline. On the new stuff, and frankly, when I see a concurrence, I get pretty concerned when there are things in there that weren't in the original bill, and I don't know what the germaneness of adding totally new contracts that weren't part of the discussion, but hopefully you can reassure me with a couple of points, and these are in regards to the executive director of MNsure. Would the Madam Speaker, would the chief author please yield to 2 more questions?
He will. Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, with the 2-year review of the ranges, is there the capability to the executive director to change those ranges? In other words, we've got ranges in the documentation. Can they, upon review, change those ranges so that they are customized for MNsure outside of the regular government? And the other one, please clarify the counter external offers as to, are they limited to be within any specified range, their existing range, or the next range up as a promotion? Or is there a total freedom for the executive director to offer whatever dollars independent of any structure within this bill?
Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and Representative Quam. Just to be clear, I'm definitely proud to be a House member. So there's not like we're giving away a House position or something here. These contracts have come through the MMB and MNscu, so we're not giving up anything like you would in negotiation or anything. So I don't feel like I've failed the House in anything here. So I'm uncomfortable with that a little bit. But so going forward, why don't you repeat your question?
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I wasn't implying anything about House position. It's just things popping up out of thin air that weren't discussed in committee or on the floor, that weren't in bills, that show up in a concurrence. I think that's a tad bit beyond the expected procedure into the specific, and I'll try to condense it for you. The Executive Director of MNsure. Okay, that position. In there are two things that have some concern that aren't clear. One, they are supposed to every 2 years review the ranges. Does that allow, in that review process, to create, change, or adapt those ranges so that they are specific to MNsure and are no longer part of the general structure? The second part, and I understand in businesses, and I can understand the concept of matching or countering an offer. Are there any limitations upon that counter as to it must be within the range that they're in, must be within 1 or 2 ranges above, or is there total flexibility? Do we empower this executive director to pay whatever they feel they need to, independent of the structures within this legislation?
Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Quam. My apologies because I got talking and forgot what your question is, but they were good questions. The pay must be within the ranges, and if there are to be any changes, they've got to go through this body and be approved by the legislature. So the ranges that currently exist by statute would be appropriate and fitting and used until maybe we changed them or we never changed them. So,
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I do appreciate the effort to try and enlighten us on at least a portion of this new thing that have been added, but I will be voting to not accept the concurrence just because, frankly, if we don't talk about it, debate it, I don't see that you can just pull anything out of your hat and toss it into a concurrence report.
The member from Wabasha, Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would Representative Lillie yield, please?
He will yield. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Lillie, it might relate to some of the discussion you had with Representative Quam, but can you review for us this MNsure contract, which is a brand new contract? We had discussion in the subcommittee on employee relations. At the very end of the meeting, of course, as you outlined, Representative Pepin and I had a full hour and a half of questions, and there were certainly additional questions as we abbreviated that meeting, or at least this portion of the discussion, in order to accommodate the narrow window that appeared at the end of that meeting. So could you outline for us how this MNsure contract develops? It appears to me that we are giving MNsure board the authority to develop their own compensation plan. Can you outline for us how that works?
Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative Drazkowski, they need to abide by this plan. So it's pretty straightforward. So there isn't any great secret there.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Lillie. Well, that's where a lot of the unanswered questions arise, Representative Lillie. There were probably 10 minutes or 15 minutes at most allocated to discussion about the MNsure contract at the end of that SER meeting. And as was outlined earlier, this is going to require a lot more vetting in order for us as a legislature to do our due diligence here. What I read here is that we are giving the authority to the MNsure Board of Directors to develop their own compensation plan. Members, we are turning this over to the board for them to have the authority to do this. Members, this requires additional vetting. It has had maybe 15 minutes of discussion in a legislative hearing that I'm aware of, and I would expect that the State Government Finance Committee, the Committee on Ways and Means, and maybe others should review this as well. I encourage your support of the Pepin motion to refuse to concur. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Scott, Representative Albright.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would Representative Lillie rise for a few questions?
He will yield. Representative Albright.
Representative Lillie, in my walk-a-day, this sounds like a management by objective type of protocol. And my first question to you with regard to that is, under the description of the determination of the performance, I'm just wondering if the board and or with your understanding, if there's been objective criteria that's been established by which the performance bonus can be achieved and or arrived at, so that there is an objective understanding in terms of what needs to be accomplished in order for that bonus to be paid.
Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative, as this plan, there's the compensation plan, and they're putting it all together, but none of the criteria, I don't think it's been developed. So they're working on it as we speak. This whole thing, has been developing through the session. We heard hours of testimony. Then it, not too long ago, it was passed, and so it's all it's a little bit of a moving target. I mean, so some of what you're saying are legitimate questions. But it is being developed. Coming from a business background myself, it's quite common to adjust to things as they develop. So it's not always comfortable for us because we want to know every peg and every line, but it's not exactly clear yet. So it's being developed, sir.
Representative Albright.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, as the employer for this group, and being from an employer's perspective, you don't sign off on the check or you don't sign off on the contract until you know the provisions that are contained therein. And so I would believe that we are moving forward at great peril, not knowing the fundamental criteria upon which we're going to award bonuses to these folks. Madam Speaker, would Representative Lillie rise for or yield for another question?
He will. Representative Albright.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Lillie, as the bonuses would pertain to adding on to the top of their base pay, do you have knowledge of whether or not those bonuses would be applicable to any additional profit-sharing contributions, any other types of bonus deferred arrangements, whether they be 401k, 403b, 457f, 457h, or any other type of compensatory obligations on the employer towards the employee?
Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Albright. It's all cash, one time.
Representative Albright.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And so, Representative Lillie, by that mentioning, they're going to receive a 1099 at the end of the year. Is this going to be included on their W-2? Would he yield?
Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative Albright, that's going to appear on their W-2 to the best of my knowledge.
Representative Albright.
Madam Speaker, Representative Lillie, if that's the case, then how can you exclude it from other profit-sharing contributions if it's includable in their W-2, unless there's a provision in the plan that specifically excludes it? And I wonder if, and I won't ask you to answer to that question, but I doubt very seriously whether or not that exclusion pertains to W-2 wages. Would Representative Lillie yield for an additional question?
He will. Representative Albright.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Lillie, in the beginning of the dissertation about performance incentives, it talks about the board may establish a pay for performance for the executive director themselves. Who is accountable to approve that pay for performance? Is it the legislature or is it autonomous based upon the board itself?
Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative Albright, the board is going to be the ones that are setting the salaries. And is that what you asked exactly?
Representative Albright.
If you think so. Would Representative yield for one more question?
He will. Representative Albright.
Now, in past legislation, we put forward an amendment to a bill that requested that on an annual basis, the board of MNsure would provide activity reports and performance reports to this body. It was voted down. And I think we're getting at the heart in terms of exactly the point of this is a board, and these are activities that, from the Pale, you have an employer who doesn't know the provisions within the salary agreements other than a range, upper, lower, and strategic middle, and yet you're asking us as a body, as the employer for this group, to sign off on additional compensation without knowing the provisions and also the accountability in terms of what objective criteria are going to have to be met in order to receive those bonuses. So, to your point, Representative Lillie, I'm just looking for the rationale that you, as a representative bringing this forth, can give me for why we should vote green on this. I'm going to vote red because I can't see, you know, it's like Jerry Maguire, show me the money, and I can't find it.
Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative Albright and, perhaps other members, we're in an interesting time. I'm in my 9th year here, and I remember when my dear friend Representative Lanning would carry this bill, and I don't remember us asking him tons of questions. I didn't negotiate these. These are negotiated between MNsCU and MMB. Now, I don't say that to say that I'm not happy to answer some questions, but I didn't negotiate them. So the reality is, you can get up here and ask me questions, and you can have fun with that. But I don't know every single detail, and there's some stuff in here that I really am not thrilled about, and I think about like the higher ed part. I'm pretty excited to see what Representative Drazkowski and Chair Pulowski do during their summer meetings, to be quite honest, and the improvements that they make. These contracts are almost done. There's 2 months left. For various reasons, and some of them have been mentioned, that we're at the end of them. A lot of them are going back into last year. So my rationale is, kind of goes back to hiring good people, treat them right, and so there's some of that. But I think that we're going to set up this new program. And a lot of us are trying to get our arms around the MNsure. I don't understand it. I wasn't on it as deeply as Chair Atkins and some of the others. And I must be honest that I don't have the full depth of knowledge. But I think these have been negotiated in good faith, and I think the public is being served well.
Representative Albright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if Representative Atkins would yield to a question then?
He will. Representative Albright.
Representative Atkins, I know that this is a topic near and dear to your heart, and I know that you've memorized the bill frontwards and backwards, and I appreciate that you've been involved in the compensation, and I'm just wondering if you would, for the body, be able to elaborate or fill in any of the details that we as a body might look to for answers in terms of a comfort or an understanding in terms of what progress has been made and or what provisions can you elaborate on to give us some comfort and understanding about. Would he yield?
Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Albright. I'd be happy to. As you may recall from the bill itself, all of the actions of the board, first off, the board needed to be appointed. The board is subject to confirmation. So to the extent that they're involved in these decisions, which they obviously intimately will be, they're subject to confirmation by both the Senate and the House. They're also subject to review by a Legislative Oversight Commission, which I believe all of the Democrats have been appointed to, and I would plead with Representative or Minority Leader Doubt to make his appointments as soon as possible so that oversight can begin. There's also the oversight by Auditor Nobles, which is on an annual basis where he will audit these decisions. I was actually a little disappointed with MMB Commissioner Showalter when he set these salaries in the bill because they are a little more modest than what I think the market dictates. But I have a ton of respect for the Commissioner. He did an internal review, looked at other resources as well before he set those salaries. And the bonus structure, the pay for performance, I think has been, frankly, more of a Republican idea over the years than a Democratic one. but it's one that I think makes sense in this entrepreneurial approach that the MNsure board is anticipated to take. With that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. We've had a lot of discussion on this, but I want to get back to the main point on this, in addition to the obvious of discussing the actual contracts themselves. The main point for this is that the Senate just put these two MnSCU contracts, which we've barely even discussed, we've mostly been talking about the MNsure, and the MNsure. And the MNsure is new. We've got close to $2 million in new salaries. I haven't seen job descriptions even for the administrative positions. I'm quite baffled as to we have an exchange and why we need 85 employees to run an exchange. That I don't think that's clearly been very explained. But we've got 3 people making over 100,000. We've got many making over 90,000. We don't have job descriptions. There's pay for performance, and then also there's the part about the executive director being able to set salaries within this range, and the range is from the lowest level is 47,000 to the high of 156,000. And I feel like it's our job on behalf of the citizens of Minnesota that we do this in the best way possible. It's no secret that I didn't agree with the health exchange. Don't think it was necessary. But now when we're putting these contracts into place, I think we owe it to the people of Minnesota not to just hear it in this subcommittee, which was just made up of a few members of the House, 5 members of the House, I think 5 in the Senate, and then I think it got 1 other committee hearing, but it didn't go through the full committee hearing process. And it's important that we go through the process when we're spending money like this. The people expect it from us, and I'm really disappointed that this didn't go through the process. It didn't get vetted out in committee, because I personally, even though I was on the subcommittee, or as I like to call it, the rubber stamp committee, Representative Lillie, Representative Drazkowski and I did ask questions, I know, for about an hour and a half, but I actually have a lot more questions on this, and I'm sure other members do as well. And I don't know how people can go home and talk to their constituents and feel comfortable saying they signed off on MNsure in particular, and we can talk about some of the other contracts later perhaps, but without really knowing what is going on in the contracts, without really knowing what they're doing, without really knowing if this is the best value we can get for the state of Minnesota, and with frankly very few legislators actually taking a look at these contracts. And so for those reasons, I think it's really important that we refuse to concur, and that we vote green, and that we do our jobs for the citizens of Minnesota.
The member from Isanti, Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Obviously, we're on a motion to refuse to concur, and we've heard a lot of discussion here today about what, whether we have a House position or not. I did a little research on this particular bill, and I'll argue that we actually do have a House position. We passed this bill, House File 1069. Just had to check my number, 1069, off of the House floor. And then after it left the House, it went to the Senate, and they added three contracts into this that really haven't been vetted here in the House. And my argument that we do have a House position is when I look at the path that this bill traveled, and I've got my iPad here with the current information on where this bill has been. It had a hearing in labor, workplace, and regulated industries. It had a hearing in state gov finance. It had a hearing in ways and means, and then it came here to the floor. That's our position. Our position is that we believe that this bill and the contents of this bill should have been heard in those committees. And moreover, I think it was just last week, and I didn't have a chance to look this up, but we actually waived the House rules to allow the bill that contains these 3 contracts to move through the committee process here in the House. And now we're being asked to, and I apologize, Representative Lillie, I know you don't like when we use this term, we're being asked to rubber stamp something that this body has not taken action on. But it's the truth, and it really is the truth. The prudent thing to do right now would be to refuse to concur with this, send it to conference committee, let it sit there for a couple of days while these committees can actually convene and hear the bills that we've already waived the rules so these bills could process, move through the process, in the House. and so that we can hear them, we can vet them in open public hearings here in the House, let members ask questions about these bills. And then, once we've done that here in the House, we're talking about a couple of committees that are going to meet anyways over the next couple of days. Let's let them hear these bills that we've actually waived the rules so that they can. And once that's happened, fire up the conference committee, take whatever action we deem is appropriate, and at that point we'll have some sort of House position on these particular contracts and bring this back to the House floor. I think that the people of Minnesota expect us to represent them here with transparency and really to do our due diligence. And unfortunately, Representative Lillie, and you know that I like you personally, but I don't think anybody wants to rubber stamp these things. And ironic, we've used that word, and I know we tease you a little bit about it, but that's exactly what we're being asked to do here. And it's not you that put us in that position. I guess it's the Senate that did, because we've added these in. Once this bill left the House, they added it in the Senate, and now it's coming back here as, my predecessor as the leader of the caucus, Speaker Zeller, said, a missile or a bomb. That's what we call these when they come at the end of session with things that we haven't heard in this body. But unfortunately, we need to do what we said we were going to do, which is with transparency and due diligence, we need to vet these particular contracts in the same way that we have already admitted that we are going to vet the rest of the contracts in this bill. Let's look at the path that this bill originally followed here in the House. Let's look at the committees that we said that it needed to go to, and let's just step back for a minute, send this thing to conference committee where it can wait for a couple of days. Let's let these bills get their hearings here in the House. All of the members on both sides of the aisle can ask all the questions they want about these bills in those committees. We could actually bring the bills then to the House floor, have a real House position, but at the very least, let's have some hearings here in the House on these bills. And we know what committees we were supposed to hear them in, because we can look at the path of the original bill. So at the very least, we should be doing our job and doing the due diligence that our constituents sent us here to do, and vet these contracts. I don't think that that's an unreasonable position at all, and that's really what this whole conversation has been about. So I think we owe it to ourselves, unless we want to rubber stamp what the Senate is sending us. If we want to rubber stamp, then vote against this. If you don't want to rubber stamp, let's vote not to concur. Let's send this to conference committee for a couple of days, and let's do our job. We can do better, members. Thank you.
The motion before the body is a motion to refuse to concur. A green vote would be with Representative Pepin's motion to refuse to concur. A red vote would be against the motion to refuse to concur and in favor of Lillie's motion next that he would like to concur. So a green vote is with Representative Pepin, a red vote is with Representative Lillie. The clerk had no roll call been requested? Okay. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. Oh, Representative Dill votes no. There being 57 ayes and 73 nays, the motion does not prevail. The motion before the body is Representative Lillie's motion to concur. Seeing no further discussion, roll call. Representative Lillie, or Representative Bernardi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to request a roll call.
Representative Bernardi requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 80 ayes and 50 nays, the motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by the Senate.
Third reading, House File 1069 as amended by the Senate.
Third reading as amended by the Senate. Any further discussion? The member from Anoka, Representative Runbeck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is my first encounter here reading all the particulars of this bill. And I have to just kind of stand back. I'm kind of blown away. This is truly a Cadillac plan. And I have to wonder, I don't know, I'll have a chance to ask, maybe Representative Lillie would tell us, but does this plan, in terms of the salary levels it reaches, does it bring the public employees back to where they would have been had there not been a recession? Is this where they would have been otherwise, all things without the loss of tax revenues for a couple of years?
Representative Lillie will yield. Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative Runbeck, many of the groups have not had a salary increase for the last few years, so that is correct. So it is a movement back here.
Representative Runbeck.
Well, Madam Chair and Representative Lillie, I don't know if I'll get the specifics out of you. I could perhaps ask you later. But, you know, this would appear to be, it's so generous, 10% increases. We got lump sum payments. That seems to be an interesting anomaly. I don't know what a lump sum payment, and who gets those kinds of things. You got the possibility for 10% bonuses. You've got separation incentive program that allows a public sector employee to receive up to a year's salary at retirement, provided that they're over 55 and have served for 15 years. You've got an early retirement notice incentive. Somebody will get a 5% increase in the salary for their final year of employment, provided they give at least 6 months notice of their retirement. I mean, these kinds of provisions are outlandish. I just would have expected that, sort of given where we've come through the last few years of recession, what the private sector has experienced, which is a full 5% reduction in total personal income as a result of the recession, and that was just 1 year, that we would have seen a little bit of a reluctance perhaps to go for the gold. But this seems to be the true definition of a Cadillac plan. I hope we're going to hear a resounding thank you, taxpayers. You've really done good for us. I mean, I hope we'll hear some thanks, because this is $300 million in addition to what, of course, we have been paying. So $300 million out of the $2 billion that we're going to be seeing in terms of new spending is simply for benefits and increased incentives and salary and so forth. So I hope the taxpayers understand. I don't know if they're going to accept, because this is a pretty lucrative profession to be in, obviously, and we're doing really well by them. I'm going to vote red.
The member from Wabasha, Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would Representative Lillie yield for a question?
He will. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Lillie, would you account for us, if you would, kind of a look back on the contract negotiation process? This began with Republicans in control in 2011, and for the 2 years that are covered by this contract, if you could kind of recount for us how that worked, or maybe you'd prefer I do, but if you would, I think it'd be helpful.
Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative Drazkowski, it sounds like you know the answer, so I'd be happy to hear it, sir. If you know it. Sounds like you knew it.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, Representative Lillie, you know, I was hoping to tap in on your memory as well, but my memory is this: the Republican legislature took control in January of 2011. The contract negotiation process normally would start about a similar time to what we're in right now. What we found, however, is that the administration drug its feet with the unions. I don't know which of the two was more guilty of dragging its feet, but together they drug their feet, and we ended up not really beginning the contract negotiation process until well into September or October of 2011. We didn't have the first contracts really, first proposals really come forward until sometime after that point. I don't remember exactly when it was, but members, what we had happen is we had an agreement between the administration and the unions that was brought forward. They went back to the unions for a vote, and the understanding or agreement was, with that vote, if it came back and the vote was not successful, that the process would go to arbitration. Well, the agreements went to a vote of the unions. They resoundingly rejected them. We're talking about MAPE and AFSCME, the two largest unions, the first two contracts really out of the chute each time in this process. And so they resoundingly defeated them, and the process was on its way to arbitration, and the governor pulled back and said, within days, I think it was, before the arbitration was to begin, the governor pulled back and said, you know what, let's go back and renegotiate. So what we ended up with, members, is instead of going to arbitration as the plan was, the administration said, you know what, let's sweeten the pot. And they came forward and pulled out the taxpayer's wallet again and provided another proposal, which was brought forward and agreed to between the administration and the unions. They went back to their union membership, resoundingly approving these even richer contracts. And you'll remember, as well as I do, probably, Representative Lillie, August 1st, I think it was, of 2012, we had a subcommittee on employee relations meeting. And in that meeting, there was discussion and culmination. It was for interim approval of those contracts. That's what it was. And we had communicated, the SER, the Subcommittee on Employee Relations, in that interim and prior had communicated to the administration and to the unions that our hopes and expectations of what we wanted to see in those contracts were real reforms. Were reforms that brought forward pay for performance. Were reforms that brought forward the employees actually paying a portion of their health care premiums. But what came forward in those contracts in August of 2012 included none of those. None of those reforms were in there. The Subcommittee on Employee Relations, then under Republican control, rejected the interim approval of those contracts and asked them to go back to the drawing table and come back with proposals that included those common sense reforms that we see ubiquitously in the private sector. And what happened? Basically, both sides, the union negotiators and the governor, said, you know what, threw up their hands and said, we're going to wait until the election's done in hopes that the Democrats come forward and that they can help give us what we want. And so, members, that's what happened. We had an election. Of course, we know millions of dollars was spent by these special interest groups in order to bring forward the majority that we have here today. And what we see before us is a process that has rendered not only, and I need to also remind Representative Lillie, while there have not been across-the-board increases for many of these groups, the reality is that they have had step increases. As a matter of fact, over each of the last 2 years, they have had step increases consistent with the ending provisions on June of 2011 when those contracts expired. Consistent with them, we have had step increases for all of these groups. We have had the autopilot increases in the employer share of the health insurance benefits. These benefits have come forward because of the fact it is written in law that they have the ability to do that in the absence of an agreement. So these autopilot increases have been going on for the last 18 months now. And so in addition to that, in many of these, we're also giving across-the-board increases in addition to this, some of them retroactive all the way back to July 1st of 2011. So, members, when it's said that these groups have not got increases, that is completely false. They largely have gotten increases, both in the health insurance area and in their step increase areas. I'm curious, Representative Lillie, if you would yield for one more question.
He will yield. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Lillie, we kind of know where this is going and where it's gone. We kind of reviewed that. Can you tell us the bargaining process for the next biennium? When can we expect that to be initiated?
Representative Lillie.
Madam Speaker and Representative Drazkowski, they're in negotiation right now. So these should be done, I would imagine they'd be done by July 1st. So.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Lillie. Well, members, there you have it. The Democrats are busy negotiating with themselves quickly and expeditiously for the next contract long before we get to the expiration of the current one that we are negotiating or that we are approving here today. So, members, what we see is 4 years of contracts being negotiated and approved for these special interest groups by the Democrats in their 2-year stint in the majority. And members, this is the epitome of rubber stamping. We are rubber stamping these special interest proposals, these rich Cadillac-type proposals. I don't have to remind folks, but we remember very well the Minnesota Taxpayers Association study that's been cited on this House floor over and over again, where 70% of the employee classifications in state government receive 7% total compensation or more greater than their counterparts in the private sector. So already the bulk of our state employees are compensated at levels above the private sector, but we are bringing forward additional Cadillac salary and benefit increases, and the current legislature is prepared to stamp onto that rubber stamp, another set here as we go into the end of this current fiscal year. Members, I encourage you to vote no on the approval of this particular bill. A couple of elements of here, if I could outline, Madam Speaker, and then I will yield the floor to others. But within the higher ed administrator area, and I have complimented Representative Pawlowski in the past on his work in this area, but there's still a long ways to go. We have in this proposal, in this contract, just two different areas that are just very symptomatic of what we're approving here today, the Cadillac benefits. One is we are providing for administrators full-time student tuition reimbursement, or essentially we're sending college administrators to school for 24 semester credit hours for free. In addition to that, if they as an administrator are not interested, or maybe they've already got all the degrees they've wanted to accumulate during their tenure, then their spouse or their children are entitled to those benefits. Full-time college benefits. And if they've got, 3, 4, 5, 6 children, they can maybe they stick around 20 years or 30 years and use those benefits up. Another thing I'd like to point out, and we still have in here, I asked in committee, we still have the $24,000 a year flat-out stipend to 7 university presidents for them to use their own private home for fundraisers and faculty senate meetings. So if you're president of one of those 7 universities in Minnesota and you happen to allow your private home to be used for a meeting or two, you're entitled to a $24,000 stipend check. There's still a lot of reform that needs to happen here, members. That provision is still in this proposal that I think the Democrats are going to further rubber stamp for their special interests here today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Carver, Representative Leidiger.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I rise to oppose this bill. You know, philosophically, there's something wrong. We've already mentioned, you know, the idea of the basic bill being added upon by those 2 contracts done in committee, and we don't know very much at all about them. But, you know, the bill itself, which really gives a Cadillac plan to government employees, there's a problem. You know, I don't have a problem with high-paying employees, and I think people should get paid a very good salary. But the problem here is we've got the largest organization in the state government, 40,000 people. Hearing all the bills that we've been hearing, all these omnibus spending bills, we've added another about 1,300 people. In this bill, we've got about 80 people in a brand new agency. And they're getting pay raises, they're getting Cadillac benefits. When you look at the private sector, they're nowhere near the kind of growth that's going on in government. And they're the ones that are paying for this. The taxpayers are paying for government. They're paying for all these added benefits and salaries. There's something wrong philosophically when you get this huge burgeoning government, state government, put on the backs of taxpayers that haven't seen these kinds of increases. It hasn't happened since 2009. Most people in my district, they're not receiving these kinds of increases. And all that's happening with you in leadership is growth of this government. It's wrong. You know, we're a service, government is more of a service organization. And those taxpayers back home, when they're on their kitchen table, they look at government as an expense when they go down their balance sheet or their P&L. Government's an expense. It should be our job to keep it small, keep it nimble. Then and make sure that people are working right in government. You want to pay them right, pay them high, that's what you do. You bring your highest qualified people in, a small organization. You use the technology as a force multiplier to do the work that government is supposed to do, and you keep it small and you keep it nimble. But it's the largest organization in the state, the #1 employer. It's ridiculous. 25 years ago it wasn't that way. You know, it looks like it's the creation of a whole new class, the government class. It's wrong. You know, we're here to work for the people of this state. And our job in here is to keep costs under control. We should not be spending like we do, like you're proposing. Well, members, vote no on this bill. It's wrong.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I, too, encourage a no vote for a few reasons. First of all, I'm very disappointed that we didn't send this back. We should have refused to concur. It's just not right that only a handful of us had a chance to look at this and ask questions in committee. The normal committee process wasn't followed, and it's especially discouraging for the MNsure contract because that's new. That is an entirely new thing, and we need to be there and we need to critique it fully and do our due diligence, and it's disappointing that that didn't happen. I just also wanted to talk just about, there are many different contracts. I just wanted to remind members of a few things in the contract that I find a little bit discouraging. One is the Minnesota Nurses Association, which allows for up to a 10% increase. And while they do work very hard, nobody argues with that, there are a few provisions in there that I think are a little bit out of bounds. One is a voluntary weekend shift bonus of $100 for nurses who work on a weekend day, in addition to their 10% increase. And the other thing Representative Quam talked about a little bit, I'm not sure if you answered this fully, Representative Lillie, so I'll talk about it a little bit, and that's the student loan repayment plan. And that plan is that if anybody has student loans up to 15 years old, in other words, if I graduated from nursing school 14 years ago, I can still get, after working for a year, and I only have to work half-time, up to $5,000 a year. And there aren't any requirements attached to that. In the legal profession, sometimes you can get a loan repayment for your very high student loans, but that's because you're working for legal aid at a much lower salary than your colleagues. Same thing can be said for some other positions, such as doctors, for working in a rural area or a low-income area to attract people there. But there are no like requirements in this. There's no requirement that they work in a rural area, in a low-income area, or anything else. And plus, there's only a requirement. Usually in those other contracts, there's at least a 5 or 10 year commitment that you're going to work there. But here, you work there for a year and you work half-time, and that's enough. I think that's a very generous contract that deserves a little bit more scrutiny. And then going on to this administration contract, and this is one, again, that was not fully vetted in committee hearings. And I just want to point members to the fact of that the ranges, the range which the board can put the chancellor in any of this, the entire range of $270,000 to $390,000. The board has the authority to change that range when they want. And then more disturbing to me is that the chancellor has the authority to set the salaries of the presidents and the vice presidents within the salary range. And I want to go over those ranges with you so you have an idea of the types of salaries we're paying. The salary for the presidents ranges from $116,000 to $328,000, and again, the chancellor can set where any particular president would fit in that range. The salary ranges for the vice chancellors is $129,000 to $318,000. And then for 2013, all other administrators, the salary range is $51,000 at the minimum to $242,000. Now, I did ask in committee all the different ranges, and I will say that the average that was given to me by the witness for the lowest range, which is the other administrators, was $70,000 to $90,000 for a minimum range. And the reason that this is particularly troubling to me, I think these ranges are a bit out of skew with what's going on in the private sector, as are some of the other contracts. But Representative Drazkowski talked about this. He talked about the tuition reimbursement. So we're talking about a range where the minimum, the lowest level of person in this plan, of all the people that are in this plan, is making $51,000. I don't know if actually anybody is making a salary that low, because I know the average is more like $70,000 to $90,000, and that's just for the lower level people in this plan. And they're able to pass on 24 credit hours. They can use it themselves, pass it to a spouse, pass it to a dependent. And I don't know about you, but I've gotten a lot of feedback from my constituents about the cost of student tuition and the fact that it keeps rising, and they want the legislature to do something about rising tuition. But what are we doing about it? We're letting them get away with the administrator plan. We're not talking faculty. We're not talking just the bread and butter staff. We're talking about the administrators. The administrators making up to the $300,000 range even. they're getting 24 credit hours to pass on to their kids. Well, we've all got constituents who are struggling to pay for their tuition. I don't think that's right. I think that needs to be looked at. I think that more people need to vet that, and that's why, again, it's especially disturbing that this particular contract didn't go through the process. I don't think that any of these contracts reflects what's going on in the state. I don't think that they were fully vetted in committee. And frankly, the more I'm on the Committee on Sub-Employee Relations, the more I feel like it's nothing but a rubber stamp committee. Representative Lillie, you've been great at allowing me to ask questions, and Representative Drazkowski. But I was discouraged with our Senate colleagues who were very clear that we were being nothing but pests in asking these questions. One of our colleagues on the other side kept saying, well, I don't know why we're asking all these questions. Pretty much said, this is just a rubber stamp committee. Very discouraging. It's our job, again, it's our job as legislators to make sure these contracts are in line with the rest of the state and to make sure they're not excessive. I don't think we can say that with these contracts. I think what we should have done is we should have refused to concur. We should have sent it back, as Representative Doudt suggested. We should have had the state government and Ways and Means look at it in the meantime and ask some more tough questions so that members could fully understand and explain to their constituents what they're about to vote on. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that very few members, especially on the other side of the aisle, actually know what's in these contracts they're about to vote yes on. For those reasons, members, I ask that you vote red on this bill.
The member from Ramsey, the author of the bill, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill's gotten to be a lot of fun in the last couple of years here. In the Senate, this bill I think they did want to move it a little quicker. They passed it in 5 minutes off the Senate floor with a bipartisan vote. Many of the things, I'm sorry if it feels accelerated. We're at the end of session, and sometimes these things happen, but the provisions were heard in a couple committees here, and I just want to end that I think we hire good people and treat them right, and I think we've been blessed with good workers in the state of Minnesota, and I just think that's important to all of us. I've heard people say that when they give their retirement speeches, how much they appreciate the staff and the work that they do, and I guess that's how I feel. Appreciate your support.
The clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 77 ayes and 52 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by the Senate and its title agreed to. The member from Beltrami, Representative Purcell, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that we recess at the call of the chair. We're not going to give a time frame on this, but we'll be sending out on email about 30-minute notice when we're going to come back.
Representative Purcell moves a recess to the call of the chair. Representative Doudt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would Representative Purcell yield for a question?
Representative Purcell. He will yield. Representative Doudt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Purcell, can you tell me why we're recessing, what we're waiting for?
Representative Purcell.
You know, Madam Speaker, Representative Doudt, yeah, we're just waiting for some things to happen on the Senate side, and going to give the conference committee some time to do some work. So we'll let you know when we're coming back.
Representative Doudt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would he yield for a question, and could he be a little more specific about exactly what we're waiting for?
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Doubt, nope, can't be any more specific. I apologize for that.
Representative Doubt.
You know, thank you, Madam Speaker. I certainly appreciate that, but yeah, I was over in the Senate not too long ago, and I'm not sure there's much coming back very quickly from the Senate. So, Madam Speaker, I would move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 9 a.m. Wednesday, May 15th, 2013.
Madam Speaker?
Representative Bernardi. Representative Dowd has made a higher motion. Let me just check and see if it's debatable. Hold on a minute.
I'd like to request a roll call.
Representative Bernardi requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Dowd, if you could please repeat your motion because I didn't hear the date and time of reconvening.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 9 a.m. Wednesday, May 15th, 2013.
Representative Dowd moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn until 9 a.m. Wednesday, May 14th? 15th. The clerk will take the roll on the motion. The clerk will close the roll. There being 56 ayes and 72 nays, the motion does not prevail. To the Purcell motion, all those in favor...
Madam Speaker, I move for a call of the House.
Hold on just a second.
Miracle Whip.
Seeing 10 hands, there will be a call of the House. The clerk will take the roll. Representative Murphy.
Madam Speaker, I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and that the Sergeant of Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
Representative Murphy moves that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and that the Sergeant at Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The motion prevails. The clerk will close the roll and the Sergeant at Arms will bring in the absent members. To the motion to recess. All those in favor, please say aye.
Madam Speaker, I move to adjourn.
All those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Representative Dowd.
Division.
Representative Dowd requests a division. All those in favor of the motion to recess, please stand. Those opposed? There being 65 ayes and 59 nays, the motion prevails. The House is in recess.